Okay, cool. All right. Let me start by doing a sort of a background. Okay, now according to the World Economic Forum, the digital revolution will transform the future of work and workplace, where as many as 133 million jobs will be created. However, there'll be 75 million jobs lost. This job churning will impact a quarter of all work and will be concentrated in a set of newly emerging professional clusters. With the onset of the pandemic COVID-19, mega trends such as digitalization, the rise of automation, and shifting demographics are disrupting the way we work and the way companies relate to workers. The Malaysian, because just now I heard some questions about education. So Priscilla was more advanced, yeah? So this group is actually going to talk about education. Now, the Malaysian education blueprint highlighted the importance of ICT innovation in schools and emphasized strengthening the delivery of STEM subjects across the education system. Additionally, the government's effort in growing the digital economy is to build businesses and industry and society as a whole. The government has also supported vulnerable groups such as the B40 and women to ensure equal access and opportunity to participate in the digital economy. And ladies and gentlemen, it is a known fact that success in primary, secondary, and tertiary education remains one of the, if not the strongest predictors of long-term social economic inclusion. Against this backdrop of what the future of work, this panel would like to address how then education and development programs, be it the content, the pedagogy, the platforms, play the pivotal role in preparing Penang for the future of work. To kickstart our panel discussion, let me call upon Professor Lily Chan to provide the overview of what's the future of work and how can we achieve it. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you. Can you hear? Okay. So I have the privilege of sort of setting the scene. And setting the scene means I don't have to give any answers. And earlier on, there were a lot of questions, and I suddenly felt us in the education industry are suddenly told, you know, we're not teaching the students, we're not giving them the right skill sets and all that, and I'll leave to my esteemed VCs from the other universities to do the defensive challenge. But really, what I want to say is that we hear about growing adoption of AI, artificial intelligence, expansion of our workforce. What's going to happen in the future? The expansion of the workforce is going to go on and off balance sheet for talent needs. What does that mean? There'll be a lot of gig workers that companies will be hiring across borders, across international borders. So what does that mean? It means that they must be well equipped with digital skill sets so that they can work across borders. Technology advances, the growing influence of consumers and the talent market will reshape the future of work, creating opportunities and threats to any industry. Now, I took a look at LinkedIn. I think many of you are very, very well versed what is LinkedIn, and they are across the world. They must have hundreds of millions of jobs that have been posted. So they're very good at making use of the data and analyzing the data. The jobs on the rise in the fields, into the future. Professionals on the front lines of e-commerce, 73% increase year on year over the last couple of years. Healthcare supporting staff, don't forget this group of people. Biz development and sales professionals, digital marketing professionals, 33% year on year. And with the pandemic, obviously, nurses, digital content creators, and again, the digital skill sets are needed. Mental health specialists, year on year, 24% increase. User experience professionals, data science specialists, artificial intelligence practitioners. When you condense all this, all our kids must have some basic skill sets in understanding how to analyze data, how to look at data, how to understand what is digital. The world has changed. All our kids must understand that. So is it STEM education per se? I don't think so. It is not about STEM education. It is about introducing curriculum that is generic and across the board. Now, universities were the last stage. I'm not being defensive. We are the last stage, isn't it? You bring the kids and you bring them in the university, they've never done mathematics before, or they fail at mathematics, and then suddenly you say you want to turn them into computer scientists. They can't. So that mindset needs to be set from the young, and then the pipeline coming into the universities may be a bit easier for us to mold. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Prof. Lily. Well, Prof. Faisal, sorry, I don't think it's offensive. But, being the premium public university in Malaysia, and of course located in Penang, how do you see USM playing the role in defining and shaping the future landscape in Penang?
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, the fact that you went straight to USM. I can't qualify, I can't speak on behalf of the 20 public universities and about 100 private universities now in Malaysia. And someone was referring to the educational blueprint. I think the target was to have 2.5 million people joining universities. Now we are hovering about 1.3 million only, which is about, I think if I'm not mistaken, about 67% of those who are supposed to go to universities. So the question is about what USM is doing with regards to it being in Penang. USM is, let me just introduce USM. USM is, we have about 10,000 staff and 30,000 students. Our budget is about 1.4 billion, which is larger than the state of Penang itself. We have a teaching hospital, 400 bed, with 500,000 visitors a year. And a couple of things that we've done. I took over the realm of the VC-ship in 2019, so I'm 2 years on the job. In the past 2 years, for example, we've opened our doors for industries to co-develop our curriculum and also in terms of development. In terms of development, we've actually opened up our doors and we've brought in about 80 million worth of investment. That includes solar, includes mixed development as well. When it comes to graduate employability or career matching, we are aware that the picture is skewed in the sense that when you look at an S&T graduates, the ability to secure jobs that matches the program that they pursue is close to 100%. Our issue has always been in terms of the numbers that we produce. We graduate about 5,000 students a year. 25% of that are engineering graduates. And that still is not enough to address the demand of the industries in Penang. To give you an example, we've increased the intake of engineering students by 50%. So in electrical and electronics, for example, we went from 80 to 120. Would we like to increase more? Obviously, yes. But of course, there are also limitations in terms of regulatory bodies and so on and so forth. So how do we actually bypass? There's a lot of talk about the curriculum not being flexible enough. So we found a way to overcome this limitation in the sense that we've been introducing tens of upskilling programs, executive diplomas, professional certificates, which industries play a major role in this. So we've been working alongside Intel and Motorola, SkyMine, an AI company. We have a lab in Western Digital that costs about 2.7 million. These are all, again, with the very clear realization that we can be the Achilles heel when it comes to growth of companies in Penang, and we're trying our very best to actually address that. But also, I think we have to also recognize the fact that in the past 2 or 3 years, the places for science and technology programs have been undersubscribed. Even with electrical and electronics, for example, when we increased from 80 to 120, the first round of applicants, we couldn't fill that 120 spaces. We managed to get about 100. Now, there's a lot of factors playing there, but I think that's one thing that is staring, at the face of all the universities. We made some adjustments. We've also introduced a summer program, kind of a preschool, so as to make sure that people are on a level playing ground, which is what you mentioned just now. 70% of the students who come to USM are from the B40 families. 1 in every 10 are from B1 and B2. So it's not a level playing field in the sense that when they come to university, people have ingrained weaknesses and need to catch up. So what we did was we tried to level the playing ground, where we introduced a summer program before they enter our 4-year undergraduate courses. And we introduced things like design and computational thinking. And this is compulsory to all new students, whether they take medicine, whether they take humanities or social sciences. They have to know a bit on computational design, computational and design thinking. We teach them financial literacy, part of the entrepreneurship undertone, if you like. By the way, we've introduced a spin-off and startup ecosystem in USM since last year, and we've actually have 15 now startups, with one of them actually getting about a million ringgit revenue in the first 6 months of its formation. We also have 5 incubators from students working on social entrepreneurship all the way to deep tech. So I think, just to answer your question, we understand this, as mentioned in the previous panel session, and we're doing our best to try to face the challenges head on. But again, it requires all 20 public institutions and 100 private institutions for us to see the tipping point. USM alone cannot do it, by itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Yes. So, Prof, thanks for sharing about some of the innovations that USM is undergoing, especially on the short-term programs and all. Next, I would like to call upon somebody probably you don't need introduction. Dato Boonler. Dato,
please. My stomach pressing against each other. Okay, all of us know the elephant in the room. Our government, our institutions, the universities know all this. We've got enough blueprints, we've got enough plans, we've got enough whatever studies that have been carried out over the years to know what to do. The question is, are we doing it? I am not from Penang. I was transplanted into Penang because I like what Penang represented 30 years ago. I look at the industry, very vibrant, people are very capable, and people are very innovative. And I still believe that Penang will continue to be that. Penang is an island. If you don't swim, you sink. I don't think we have a problem with Penang. I only have a problem with other places. So there are 3 points that I want to raise. The medium and small industries in Penang must adopt Industry IR4, Industrial Revolution 4, and digital technology. That's a given. Now the question is, how do we help all these companies develop that? We've talked and we've heard quite a number of initiatives, both by the government as well as private sector. We need to continue to do that. If you look at the My Digital Blueprint, there are 4 specific strategic initiatives. 1, integrate digital skills and education at primary and secondary school. Right, so you got to start them young. All of you, if you have grandchildren, nephews and nieces, you know, right? When you buy a new TV, to operate the TV, who do you ask to help you? Your nephews and nieces or your children? because they are better at that. So start them young, they'll never go wrong. 2, universities and training institutions must shift their focus not on job-specific skills alone, but towards competencies and adaptability. Our students, they are unemployable sometimes because they have not been taught to be adaptable. They have been taught to be able to regurgitate facts. Now, does anybody learn how to spell anymore? No, because you got spell check. Do you do the multiplication table? No, I can use my phone. So, adopt all that so that from very early, you have to have talent who are adaptable and who are innovative and who are not scared to challenge. We've heard the Vitrox of the world, the great techs of the world. These are the people who are willing to leave Intel and come out and make a living. They have learned from the multinational. It's time for them to come out. Now, the success of Penang can only be further enhanced if you can encourage more of such people to come out and start on their own. Now then comes to the third point then, the gig economy. Lily has brought up that in the future, a lot of companies will be relying on gig workers to do their work. Fantastic. So we have to encourage our children and our children's children to be self-employed, rather than just worry about getting a job in the government or in the private sector. From very young, teach them that there is no such thing as a free lunch. Too many people depend on the government for handouts. The day should be, if there are government officers here, please take away all the handouts. Take away all the scholarships. Get the students to pay for their education. Then they will appreciate. Right? When you take your grandfather's money to succeed, you don't feel the pain. But if it is coming out of your own pocket, then you will realize it. Okay, the other point that I want to raise up is you can talk until the cows come home, but if industry, academia, and the private sector don't work together and still continue, like Andrew says, working in silos, you will never go anywhere. Okay? So it's about time, get your heads together, and I'm sure by the time we leave this conference and we come back a year from now, we'll be talking about the same thing. Right? So, but I believe for Penang, it will continue to be successful and vibrant because the young people in Penang, there is a special breed here in Penang who enjoy wealth creation, understands what money can do, quality of life is good, and they are willing to come out. And I would like to shout out, there's one organization that I'm very impressed with, very recently set up, called Forward School, with the help of Vitrox and a few other technology companies. They are the ones at the forefront, helping to upskill whoever in Penang interested to be able to acquire capability to work, not just to depend on the government. With that, ladies and gentlemen, sorry if I have insulted anybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Dato. So Dato's underlining is action. Don't talk so much. I mean, let's talk action more. All right. Thank you. Next, I would like to call upon Dato Ong. Can you share your thoughts about what are the, because we have been mentioning all the skill sets that we have, like e-commerce, data analytics, IR 4.0 and all that. Maybe you could crystallize it and let us know what are the skill sets, the technological skill sets that's required.
Okay, thank you, Billing. Of course, I'm not the technology guy. I'm a banker. So my perspective would be a little bit different. But what I can say is that definitely even in places like financial industry, I think we are the early adopters of digital technology. But digital technology, whether it's electronic banking, emails, and all that kind of thing, is just part of it. The real transformation is what we actually do with the ability to use digital information. I think it requires, well, like Tan Sri Andrew Shen says, a mindset change. We can have all the data. Certainly, the banking industry has so much data about our customers, but we don't really make use of it, partly because of regulation, the security part. But I think one of the key is that when we want to make use, do we have the talent pool? I think it's very easy to always blame the education system, whether it's the schools at the primary or the tertiary. But the reality is, us as corporations, whether you are in manufacturing, whether you're in e-commerce, or whether you're in banking, I think it's incumbent of us to actually retrain our people. And clearly, in fact, when we look around, there's so many ways you can actually train our people, because there is so much ability to learn online these days. I think clearly, I sit on the Asian Banking School. It was created from the Institute of Bank Malaysia, for the training of the industry. But we realized that through online, we can actually do more than just Malaysia, because we coined the name Asian Banking School. And then we even have the Asian Institute of Chartered Bankers, because we know that there is so much ability to reach out from online. And actually the crux of the game changer was actually in 2020, when we realized that the online thing has to come on, because we could not have physical classes, which helped us to be very successful. So now, I won't be doing justice to the country. I think the leaders have actually come up with very good blueprints, set up, even Penang Digital, My Digital Penang. I think if you spend time to understand it and see what they have provided, there is so much for us to take advantage. But the reality is, some of the people ourselves have got ourselves to blame, because we are not actually embracing it. For instance, from the information that's been shared with us, when the pandemic started, there was this great funds by Bank Negara to help industry digitalize their operations and all that. But guess what? The funds that were available for them, it was hardly tapped. Because I can't blame them, because first of all, they're worried whether the payback. They're worried that even if they are digital ready, but there's no business, like many people say, I need the market, but I do not, I'm not sure. I don't have a funding problem. Now, having said that, you can see that what has actually worked well for Penang is we had 50 years of great ecosystem. We've had the fundamentals already. Now, what is it going to take us in the next 20 to 30 years? The world has changed. I think sometimes the biggest problem for us is that when we are too cushy. If you look around, unemployment rate in Malaysia is about 5%. It dips slightly. But guess what? Youth unemployment is easily triple. But do you see problems on the streets? No, because the youths are well fed. They have parents who are very ready to give them comfort. If they are working late at night, the parents say, are you sure you want to work in this job? It doesn't just talk about people in manufacturing. It can be people in accounting. I'm sure PwC, my friend in PwC had the same problem, because we have gone very soft. And that's why I think in Singapore, I mean, I'm from a Singapore-owned bank, so I realized some of the problems they face is what we face. So that's why they have a very aggressive foreign labor so-called plan. over the last 50 years. But of course, it has come back to backfire on them slightly, partly because I think they start to want to protect their own Singaporeans. But the talent shortage is real everywhere. It's not just in the high technology stuff, it's even the plantation, the construction. So we must not also forget that while we want the high labor force, we must also find a way to bring Malaysians and to work in areas that may be considered difficult and dirty, but these are the ways that they need to be productive. Otherwise, we are actually having a gap. So I think this is something that not easy to solve because it's a social problem, but if we're not careful, if we are stuck in the middle income trap, the reality is that these unemployed graduates that we have, and in fact, I think the statistics show that we have almost like 400 to 500,000 unemployed graduates. But I think for us as employers, we have to learn to teach them. We may find that they are not entirely prepared, but it's something that we have to do. Even within bank itself, we have spent at least 2.5% of our budget, manpower budget, on training. And it also talk about training people who are not just the younger ones. Actually, Malaysia, if you go to one of my slides, I prepared 2 slides. Can you go to the first slide? But anyway, very nice picture of Penang by David Low, thanks to him. If you look at it, the first slide, you can see that Malaysians generally are comfortable about digital. Most of them, if you ask them, they know how to, but it's not just about using the smartphone, getting information. They also realize that actually without ability to use digital, they're going to suffer, and they are also worried. So these are catalysts to actually make people want to make the move to help themselves. So I think we have the ingredients, because the survey tells us that we are also worried that if we don't move fast enough, we could be out of a job. We could be displaced, and the future is not going to wait for us, because there are many countries within ASEAN who are more hungry than us, and they're younger. And because they have not, they sort of skip one time. So all the technologies they had is totally new. Because when they come to sort of realize that this is the world they live in, it is a brand new technology they are embracing, like China. China is so much advanced in e-wallets and all that payment system, because they actually skip one generation of the old financial system. So I think that is something that we have to look out for. It means that we may sometimes need to disrupt ourselves, but it may be necessary. But it's not something that for the academics, but it's actually for the businesses themselves, because we have to, like it or not, find a way to train and sustain ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow, a different perspective altogether, disruptive economy, how we jumpstart, especially for the industry. And it is something that I think definitely for businesses is you do or die. Yeah, thank you for that. And I wanted to pick up something about what Dato said just now about the My Digital. Yeah, and for that, I would like to call upon Prof. Zabid. Your thoughts, please, on these changing roles of the higher education, and on this part about the My Digital, because My Digital initiatives has already been launched. So maybe, Prof, could you actually share with us how can Penang ride on this My Digital initiatives? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Morning, everybody. Afternoon already, I guess. Okay, basically, before I touch on My Digital initiatives, I would like to highlight 2 points first. First, about the higher education in the post-COVID-19 environment. Basically, I think, I'm already a retired person in higher education. Okay, I was in higher education for quite some time. But I think one of the biggest challenge for institutions of higher learning today is to identify or to know what is the role of academics Okay, the role of academics today from lecturers to become mentors and coaches. This is going to be a big problem. Okay? In other words, they have to be great actors and actresses in the stage of university education. All right? And basically, the basic question here is, to what extent do our academics or are our academics really ready to set for this kind of work, particularly in teaching and learning? Because we are looking about moving from pedagogy to andragogy, and now we're talking about heterogogy, self-managed learning. All right. So I don't want to talk very much because I think my next colleague will be addressing very much on higher education. But basically, coming back to the world of work, everybody is saying, as a result of COVID-19, there's not much work available. I said no, there's a lot of work available, but we are not doing anything. I agree with Dato Ong, Well, what is the problem is, okay, the first thing that we need to do is we must understand IDA, the light of IDA. What is IDA? IDA is not just a name of person, It's awareness, interest, desire, and action. Are we aware about the global environment, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment? Okay, due to technological changes, political changes, and social changes. Secondly, do we have to know, or are we interested to know more about information to move on? You see, today we talk about low-touch economy. How many people understand what is low-touch economy? Okay? And what is the impact on our daily lives on low-touch economy, for example? And the other one is, how are we able to act to fit into the new world of work with all the impending challenges or changes that's going to face? Now, why I say there's a lot of work today? Because I have an acronym. I like acronym. I love acronym. The next acronym is RACE. What is RACE? You see, the world of work today, we need to review our business and work processes. You see, how many of us are actually reviewing our business processes? We are still using business processes in the pre-COVID-19 era. You are asking people to work from home. A few weeks ago, I went to Kuala Selangor and I look at the grasses, it's so high. You know why? Because the grass cutters were working from home. That's the reality, And as I pass through from the airport to here, I also look at by the side of the Penang Highway. I also notice they also work from home. The greeneries. So these are the realities that we are not doing. Secondly is, are we acting on the stakeholders and audiences? For example, to what extent are we reviewing the rules and regulations? To what extent are we actually coping with the low-touch economy? Okay? And number three, for example, I like Dato Ong, I have many experiences in terms of banking services. You see, during the pandemic, this is my personal experience. I don't want to mention to you which bank. It took me 1 year to get a letter saying that we will handle your discharge of the charge. I think bankers understand what is it. 3 months to get a simple letter saying that we have received all your payments. 6 months after that to get a letter saying that we will get you a lawyer to handle this. And 3 months after that, the lawyer tells me we are ready for the discharge of the charge. So 1 year process. And then when I went to the lawyer's office and asked how long will it take, I'm sorry, sir, it will take another 8 months. What? The land office is not working. They are working from home. Okay? So this is the reality. So the other thing is to engage the stakeholders, advocacy. That means they have to accept, they have to follow, adhere, allegiance, and amenable. Now, when you talk about the blueprint, I'm very happy to say that actually, when you look at the digital blueprint, there's a lot of opportunities available for everybody, including Penang. And I'm very happy to say that actually Dato Boonler, yeah. He's very well-known figure, I know, in Penang, And he has already spoken about, actually, in my digital deprint, there are two major thrusts to address. One is actually related to thrust 4, which is building agile and competent talent. And Dato Boonler has already mentioned the first two strategies, which is getting the primary and secondary school education, and also second one is to move from vocational to competencies, okay? Now, what I would like to say here is this, I would like to offer this for the upskilling program, particularly. And I'm very sad that, I don't want to mention which agency or what, Malaysians, they are very sensitive. They have very nice programs, nice from far, but, when you are near, you know what is it all about. So basically, the upskilling program is particularly very important. And particularly if you look at one particular program that we need to do is what you call professional upskilling, to be ready for the digital economy. And I'm very sorry, the response of higher education institutions or vocational institutions are quite slow, in the sense that if you want to have a Bachelor of Data Analytics in 4 years' time, I think the data analytics systems is already outdated. So basically, I have a proposal, that's why I already told. I have a proposal where we can prepare your data professionals within 6 months or 4 months. And this is what the industry wants. And you all have the HRDF fund. Why do you let the fund to sit on it? Let that fund roll out. Now, for example, we have a program that, that we can organize. I'm working with my partner from European Union companies and supported by EU Foundation to upskill. Because today, under the new economy, the government needs almost, in Europe, they need about 900,000 data professionals, which means including data engineers, data scientists, data analytics. And I believe in Malaysia, if I'm not mistaken, the data shows that Malaysia needs about 20 to 30,000 data professionals. How are you going to give birth to these people? You don't have 9 months, You have basically 3 months to produce, okay, or 6 months to produce. So there's a lot of work to be done, and I agree. We have a lot of resources, and it's about time. The industry, the government, and even tertiary institutions need to play a more proactive role, so that we can support this. The only question now here is, do we have the people who is interested to be data professionals? The challenge is because, like some of Professor from USM say, students are there, but they are not ready to be data professionals or to take up the new economy because they have a different experience in terms of higher education or secondary education. So we need to have some specific programs to give up what you call the top up, so that they will be able to cope for that. Right. Okay? So I think that's about all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. Very insightful about this My Digital, and we actually have picked up, that we should be also looking into compressing some of the programs that we have been running, rather than waiting for 4 years, probably even to look into a half year, get them out into the market. Last but not least, I would like to call upon Prof. Roziah, who is the VC of the largest higher education institution in Malaysia. What's your view about the role of education in developing entrepreneurship? Because we were talking about, future of work is no more just employment, but also about entrepreneurs. Over to you, Prof.
Thank you, Madam Ong. Okay, basically I would like to respond to Prof. Zabid and a few panelists, and also the earlier questions coming from the previous panels, talking about curriculum was not responding fast enough. I would like to mention the university actually did respond to all those needs. I have to concur to that because I have been in charge of this curriculum review for the past almost 15 years. So we have been doing that. We are calling people from industries, think about what is needed for this future of work. But maybe that sort of, when we talk about those, maybe it was not rightly pinpoint. And we didn't know that COVID-19 coming. So now, perhaps we have to review those again. And we have been reviewing curriculum for almost every 3 months. I just want to mention that. At the same time, when Dato Boon, Dato Ong and Dato Boon mentioned that, so I agree when you say unemployment are actually by choice. So parents are actually helping. So it goes with me. So I'm helping my daughters, even though their wage, earlier on, somebody mentioned about wage, very low. So she accepted that wage, less than what I thought it should have been for a master's graduate. But at the same time, I was helping her. So, of course, this unemployment is actually by choice, because they want to go, they still want to be with us, supporting them. Okay, coming back to this entrepreneurial, the way I prepared my presentation, I look into three components. Mindset, okay, as been discussed earlier. Can I have my presentation, please? Yeah, this is future work. That's the title. Thank you to Penang, to KSI for inviting me for to this Penang Future Forward Summit. And next slide, please. Okay, that's myself. These are the three things that are supposed to talk about when we want to produce this entrepreneurial future workers. I would say we have to look into this ecosystem transformation. Yes, I agree. We have to look into not just university, we have to look into the primary education, secondary education, and also, of course, university education. And mindset transformation, skill set transformation. These are the three things that we need to look into. And I purposely put it like in the Venn diagram there, because it actually cannot be separate from one another. And Prof. Zabid mentioned about data. I want to say here that I'm a statistician, so I know what data is all about. So I agree with you. And in UITM, we do have data analytics, and we have that. We developed that curriculum within less than 18 months, and we do have AI program also. So bear in mind, it can be done. So I agree with you. Perhaps we can shorten that program, okay, into maybe 6 months, and somebody else. For universities, we have to have that kind of time frame as yet. And institutions like yours, companies like yours, perhaps can help the industries to produce more of this data analytics people, right? So when it comes to ecosystem again, and this, I talk about curriculum, yes, that's part of it. And bear in mind, when we go through this curriculum review, it should now start looking into this problem-solving method. I know Penang has a wonderful team looking into this problem solving. So they have trees, right? That's what I heard. So Intel has this trees a team looking into problem solving. So this is what we need to go into the real detail. When we do this curriculum review, it's not just about mapping, program outcome, learning outcome, or course learning outcome, but we need to go into the detail of it. What kind of courses that is needed in order to serve the future? So we need to do that. So I would say in 2025 onwards, we must have graduates who can actually solving problem. How do we go about that? We want to inculcate students so that they know their surrounding. the beauty of problem solvers is they can see problems and they can observe their surrounding, and from there they can take the opportunity to solve, and that solution perhaps can make money okay, to be entrepreneurial, right? So that's the basic of an entrepreneurial. And same thing with skill set. Same thing with skill set. Something got to, when we do curriculum review, we have to change, we have to look into the future. So we have to look into the future. What kind of skills are needed? I agree with Prof. Zabid when he says we need data person. But it is not, you don't, overnight you cannot produce people who can understand data. Now even we have big data, right? Big data. So you need to make decisions. From that data alone is not enough. So once you know that data, then only you have information. Out of that information, then only you have knowledge. With that knowledge, then only you can make decision. That's the skill that we need to produce in the future. I would say that's what we need to prepare, not just for Penang, for the nation, for the whole nation. I think I stops there.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for even sharing the framework, on how do we do this transformation and how we should be prepared in facing the future of work. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is yours. The floor is yours. Yeah. Well, please take the mic. We have mics. There are 4 mics here. Please state your name and who would like the questions to be answered. Yeah, please go ahead. Okay. Yes, Prof.
I just want to add here. Actually, for Penang, I see under the My Digital initiative to boost economic competitiveness through digitalization, one of the areas that is actually highly in demand, and I'm not sure whether Penang would like to adopt it, is to offer digital solutions. Okay? That means like apps to different types of businesses and needs in the value chain. Why? Because this is part of the program. And in Penang, there are 85,000 micro, small, medium enterprises. There are 85,000. And this is one of the government's plan for 2025. So basically, if Penang would like to play an important role in terms of what Tan Sri and Rushang said, enhance the value added, okay, of his economy, then it's about time that these medium or small and medium companies, all right, get involved in the complete value chain of the digital transformation exercise. Otherwise it will be quite difficult. All right, and of course the other element that I want to mention is that the government itself encourages digital industry cluster. So for example, if Penang is very good in electronics, E&E, then it's about time that you enhance your digital cluster in that sense, for example. Okay, and of course, developing local digital content and cybersecurity will be very important. So just to give some highlights.
All right, thank you, Prof. Dato, you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe I can add something also on the from the industry's perspective, because we're talking about education. We're talking about education of the new generation and also the existing workforce. I think maybe a call to the education sector is that I think nowadays when we talk about the needs of an organization, whether whatever industry you're in, let's say Professor Lily has mentioned that these are the key jobs of the future. Now, employers and employees who are employed right now, they know what they need. And I think one of the challenges is that the cost of education, of course, in Malaysia, the cost of education is not as prohibitive and sort of paralyzing as, let's say, in the US and all that, when people graduate already have $200,000 debt. But in Malaysia, it's still very expensive. And I think a lot of employees do not have the time. So I think what we should work with industry and academic to have bite-sized programs, modular programs that are cheaper and at the same time faster. Because sometimes they just need to zoom in on a particular skill set that they want to improve. And the employer will more than gladly pay for it. If they know that within 6 to 9 months, this person is ready for the job. He may not be ready, he or she may not be ready, but if I put him on this course, And I can train a lot of people for that. So I think the industry and academic need to work for it. But you need to reduce the cost, because I'm still seeing a lot of courses, they're very expensive for like 2-3 days. I know it's scary, you know. So maybe something that we can do for our existing workforce, to transform them, to make them better.
Wow, good
Can I-
suggestion. Yeah, Prof.
Can I make a comment here? I think the challenge we're facing right now is education an industry? Is education a P&L, the education industry? And if you look at the 100 private universities and you look at the 395 private colleges in Malaysia, you think about it. Do we have the ability to absorb all this? So everyone is trying to do a P&L at the end of the day. And once you start going down that path, you compromise a lot of things. I think that's my only comment. And I think something needs to be done at some point. It's great to think about bringing in foreign students and international students into Malaysia so that education is an industry. But in that process, a lot of all these fundamentals will be lost. But I don't have an answer, I'm just bringing up a point. And I think short courses, certifications, and all that, they are being run right now. Whether or not they're relevant, not relevant, I think it is for the industry to look at. But I think the job creation part, as mentioned earlier, through entrepreneurship and all that, is a must. I think we can't continue to rely too much on MNCs. We need to teach into the curriculum how to think independently, how to take the leadership and do your own thing, right? So the gig economy allows a lot of people to do that. But we already in Penang have so many success stories from the semicon industry, so many spin-offs, so many success stories, but it's not carefully written out, nor promoted. It's not well narrated, so that is lost. To a young person growing up, sorry to pick on you, Chu, to a young person growing up in Penang, you don't pinpoint and say, I want to be like Mr. Chu, I want to be like Mr. E.K. Tan, you know. We have to promote that in Penang, so that as we develop the curriculum in the universities, we also allow our kids to aspire to become these people. There are so many. Sorry, I come from Singapore. We would love to have more Mr. Chus and Mr. E.K. Tans,
we have
but
to
we
stop
don't.
the promotion about Singapore too, right?
We would love to have that in Singapore in my previous life, but we don't. And I come to Penang and I'm totally shocked and surprised that you have it here, but you're not promoting it. You're not pulling it all together. And this goes back to Tan Sri Andrew Sheng's comment that everyone's working in a silo. No one's looking at it across the board. Look at your industry cluster. So many of you say from the industry cluster, you've spun off so many supporting services. That on its own, you need to narrate that story, right? So that needs to be done. And I'll leave it to Tony later on to talk about the Creative Digital District and what they plan to do in the heritage region of Georgetown and job creation over there.
Right. Thank you, Prof. Thank you for sharing about having role models and talking about the role models and having a narrative around the role models as an inspiration for the younger generation. We have a question here. Yes, sir, can you say your name?
Yeah, I'm Prof. David, president of a university in Penang, the RCSI and UCD Malaysia campus. I'm just interested in whether the panel think that maybe industry is looking for too much from universities and that universities are really very reactionary and not hardly likely to change in the way that industry wants them to. It was Albert Einstein who said that education is not the filling of minds with knowledge, but the training of the mind to think. And I think largely universities have lost their way in that largely it is about just churning out courses that are largely knowledge-based, and the academics themselves haven't always been taught to think and to work things through, and they're unlikely, therefore, to be able to mentor students in that sort of process, whereas industry is looking for people who are thinkers and who don't necessarily need all the knowledge. They need the ability to critically think when they go into industry and actually develop from there. And maybe it is that universities are not the places that we're actually looking for, and that the degree process itself is out of date, and we should be looking for something a lot more straightforward. Certainly when I went to university, to get the knowledge that I needed, you went to libraries and books, and now I can find it in seconds on my phone, and yet we're still teaching the same sort of knowledge, and that's an indictment on my institution as well as other universities,
And so
and
your
expecting
question
people
is?
to do. My question is whether universities are actually out of date, and and industry is looking to the wrong place for any solution to this sort of problem.
Yeah. Can I ask Prof. Faisal to answer that?
Thank you so much. I think that's a very relevant comment. I think we have to play that balancing act between, as you mentioned just now, which is primarily to actually let young people discover themselves and think for themselves in that 4 years that they invest in the university. But I think the picture is also very skewed in the sense that, while it's ideally applicable to everyone, and I also agree in the sense that we've moved away from the rote kind of approach where we're investing in micro-credentials where student is based on competency instead of a year. So we have a 3.5 year program, all online, all in digital format, and people can just finish that in 2 years, for example. But I completely agree in the sense that that balancing act is tremendously difficult to do, simply because on one side, I think excellence require. There's a research that says, there's a study that says that for every progress made in research compared to 20 years ago, it will cost us more. It will cost us more to come up with a similar step in terms of innovation and progress in terms of knowledge. So as a university, you need to feed that. You need to feed the excellence as well. So, there's this certain kind of pragmatism in the sense that, okay, we have our ideals. We don't compromise the values, but at the same time, we are also subject to a number of external evaluation as well, which unfortunately determines how much you get in terms of funding your operations or research and whatnot. And again, it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive in that sense. It's not to say that people who are marketable are lacking in values or can't think for themselves. It is in fact, quite complementary in that sense. But we also realize, at least in USM, that we can't solve all these problems, and we see ourselves as actually needing more and more support from the industry. But yeah, I think at the same time, as you mentioned as well, I think we have to meet people halfway. We have to temper the expectation as well. We can produce X number of people with a technical background, but we also, as a comprehensive university, we also have to maintain people who are working in history, heritage, and all those things which cannot be measured in terms of graduate employability, for example. So yeah, I don't have all the answer, but I think that's a very relevant point, but at the same time, it is always under pressure for us to get that balance right to a certain extent. Because at the end of the day, what the industry demands are people who can actually continue bringing money into the nation, and it doesn't hurt to bring investors and revenue into the country, because again, with that we can actually feed more excellence as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So for that, maybe I would like to invite each of our panelists to say something in 1 minute. I know it's a challenge, but Prof Lily?
Okay. I feel that learning is a skill, right? And we need to, and as Prof Roziah has said, we need to teach people to think. And that's part of education. Learning is a skill. So you want to learn, you don't want to learn, how you learn, all that is a skill. And if we can teach in our curriculum how to teach people how to learn, it's lifelong learning after that. You will pick it up as you go along. So that's my 1 minute.
Thank you, Prof Lily. Prof Faisal?
Thank you. I'm personally cautiously optimistic. Why do I say that? I think I think there's a lot of statistics available, and there's a tendency that we overgeneralize, things. We just sweep everything in one, cast everything in one color, for example. But I think there are signs of progress, if you like. And I think this sort of forum, for example, is extremely important for us to get whatever that we have out in the open. And I think from USM point of view, we've been very blessed that the industries that surround us are ever willing to help us in our cause, and I hope that will continue as well. Thank you.
Dato?
I'm very optimistic. I always believe Penang will survive. Right? If you are in a swimming pool and you don't know how to swim, you'll drown. So you have no choice but to learn how to swim. So this is what I see happening in Penang with the help of the industry. But industry must not stop lending a helping hand. That's the most important. Local companies became successful because the multinationals gave a helping hand and a head start. Now, the same must also happen with the local companies who are now very wealthy, right, to help others to build an ecosystem that will then mirror what we started in 1971.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Boonler.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Ong?
I wanted to just say that I think arising from this pandemic, we realized that there's this digital divide. We found that digitalization, people with the digital skills and infrastructure could do very well. But at the same time, we realized that we're also highly dependent on people who do the basic job. People who clean the streets, deliver the food. So we must not neglect them, because I think one of the biggest problems is that we always realize that we just want to look at the big heroes, the Jeff Bezos. But behind the Jeff Bezos, there's probably 2 million, I think, Amazon employees that are doing basic jobs. They're delivering parcels, they're doing 12 deliveries, and they're all tired out. And they are using digital technology, but we must not leave them behind. So very often we glamorize those people. We think that they are going to solve all the problems. But we need to have those people who do those jobs as well to make sure the economy hums. So don't forget them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato, for the reminder of the others that we never mentioned. Prof. Zabid?
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think COVID-19 is a blessing in disguise. Why is it? Because due to COVID-19, everybody has got to accept, adhere, and also get their allegiance to digitalization and digital transformation. Okay? And with that, I agree with Dato Boonler. There's a lot of fish. The basic question now here is, there's a lot of fish around you. Do you know how to catch the fish? Or do you use the right fishing rod to catch the fish? So this is where actually the opportunities are there, and whether we are able to see how we can create new value to the community, to the state, and also to the country as a whole. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Zabid. Prof. Roziah?
All right, I would say my final message would be, don't stop planning. Even though people say, we have so many blueprints, but I think we need the blueprint. But what we need is actually somebody got to read it and execute it. If you don't have a plan, it's like an Alice Wonderland. You don't know where you want to go, right? Okay, and to that aspect, I would say transformation is not merely about what one gets, but what is more important is what one becomes. Thank you.
Right, thank you so much. Probably just a quick wrap up of what we have heard today from my esteemed panelists. When we look into the talent pipeline, the whole spectrum of talent pipeline, we have the call from the parents. We have parents who say, okay, stop the child from going overseas and all that, or encouraging them, the 70% encouraging them from going overseas. The parents play a critical role, in how you form the mindset of the child. And as you go along from the spectrum to when they're in the primary school, in the secondary school, in the tertiary education, and then that is where the education system is, and then the employers. employers talking about the upskilling and the reskilling, as well as coming out with initiatives like forward schools and all that. All this working in tandem. So this is basically what we call the convergence and a collective effort from all the multi-stakeholders for us to move forward. Yeah. So with that, I would like to encourage everyone to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.